Hey, it's Adam. I'm going to be doing the rear brake pads and rotors on this 2012 Murano, and I got some rear pads and rotors from rockauto.com, and then these come with the little hardware pieces and everything, and they're pretty small little brake pads, so those are going to go on there. And then we've got two rotors. So these are Durago rotors, which I've also used on my Fusion on the front before, and those were fine. And then these are these Power Stop ceramic pads. So we're going to put those on. And so I'm going to basically do both sides at the same time. So I've got a jack positioned under here, and then we're going to loosen the lug nuts first, or break them loose, and then we'll start jacking it up. The tires already come off with the wheel here. So we'll just lay this somewhere. And then I've already unscrewed, taking the lug nuts off this other one. So let's pull this off now. Put it over here. And so now we're ready to get busy on these brakes. We're gonna have to undo 4 screws back here. This screw here, there's one on top and bottom to take the caliper off and to get the pads out. And then there's 2 more bigger screws back here that hold the bracket that actually holds the caliper on there. We have to take that off because we're going to take the rotor off. So this back here is going to have to come off. Okay. I'm going to start with these 2 screws on the caliper right now. So these are usually pretty easy to get off. It's these other bigger ones that'll be a little bit harder. Maybe not. Okay. So that's how we broke that one free, and then we'll try this other one. And it looks like I've got this in the way here, so I can't even get my ratchet on there. So let me come back to you, and I'm gonna get a different wrench for that. Okay, so I just got this opening wrench because, like I said, this thing was in the way there. So I'm gonna try to hopefully be able to break this free like this. So hopefully, we'll see what happens. Okay, so that's broke free, and now I can take the rest of them off with just my fingers now. I'm actually kind of shocked how hard these were to get off, but okay, so these are actually the slide pins. So I'm able to get this top one out, but it looks like I still can't even get this one out all the way because of this bar. So that's fine. I'll leave them in there for now, and then I'll go ahead and start taking these other bigger bolts off. This is the bracket for the that holds the caliper on there. So these may be even more difficult. And so let's see. I'm probably gonna have to use a cheater bar. I already know that. So let's see if I can get it on there. So I just took a bar and put it on the wrench to give me more leverage. But I may not have a lot of room to work with in here. Okay, so that came off pretty good, and I'm gonna get this other one broke loose down here if I can. Okay, so we have the same problem once again down here because of this bar. So I can't do anything with that. So once again, I'm gonna have to try to go find another opening wrench, I guess, and hopefully get it loose. So I'll be right back. So I've been calling these open-ended wrenches, but I wanted to show you something real quick. So apparently, actually this would be considered an open-end wrench, and then these are called, this here would be called a box-end wrench. So just to correct myself. So we're using a box-end wrench on this. And so, well, we'll see what happens. Just need to figure out where to put this flashlight. And I need to think about which way I'm going to screw this, so I think I need to pull it up, pretty sure. Okay, so we'll see what happens here. This is not going to be easy. Oh, man. Okay. So we got it actually broke loose. Need to turn it up. This is feeling pretty tough to kind of get out, but it's coming very slowly. And what sucks is I basically have to keep using this wrench over and over to get this off, because I really I didn't have room for the ratchet and the socket to fit in there. So this will be a slow process. So I think what I'm going to do is probably just come back to you here in a little while, because what I'm going to do is I'll probably have the same problem on the other side. So I'm just going to come back to you once I get all these screws off, okay? All right. Okay, so I got all the screws out on the other side, and then I've got all the screws out on this one. And I just want to show you how this comes out. First of all, I would recommend breaking loose these two first, because if you kind of take these out first, then you're not going to be able to break these loose, because then the whole thing's just going to want to like fall out. And the other thing is, you pretty much have to take these two screws out, and then this one, and then you can't take this one out unless you go ahead and take everything out. So, because it doesn't have room to slide out. So I just want to show you. Since we've unscrewed everything, I mean, you could just take the caliper out, but I'm going to go ahead and remove the bracket and the caliper at the same time. So I'm going to show you what we're going to do. So okay, so it came out pretty easy. And now I'm going to go ahead and pull this bolt out. This is a slide pin. Okay. And so now this is the bracket that the caliper screws onto, and then the pads are in there. So we'll set that down there. And then this is the caliper, and you don't want to let it dangle from the brake line. So since this is so small, it'll sit fine just on there like that. If you're doing this on the front, you might want to put like a bucket down here, and you can just set it on that, or you can use bungee cords. So another thing I did is I took a picture of the brake and how it looked before I took it off, just in case I got confused once I started to try to put it back together. So now we just need to go ahead and get this rotor off. And then there's a little screw right here, and it looks like we'll have to put a little flathead screw in there to get that off. So let me grab that real quick. Oh, wait a minute. Apparently it's a rubber thing, so let me see what happens. Okay, so what I found was there really wasn't a screw here. This was just a rubber piece, and I've never seen that before. But I guess instead of making new rotors without the hole, they just put this rubber piece in there, and then you got Reggie in the way here. But it was hard to get the rotor off. I had to like beat it with a hammer. which is not an uncommon thing to have to do. Especially if you're going to replace the rotor anyways, it's fine to beat the crap out of it. And then, as you can see, it's pretty nasty and rusted in there. So this will be good. And the other thing I saw here is these shoes are for the parking brake. As far as I can tell, the parking brakes still work fine, so we're not going to worry about those. So what I'm going to do is go over here and beat the other rotor off. So there's a shield right here, so we'll have to we'll beat it from the front, but we'll kind of beat it from right here too. We don't want to bang on the shield. So here we go. See, it's not coming off immediately, so. I'm beating on different points of it. You don't want to beat on one of these studs, by the way. Alright, I'll just come back to you once I get the things off. So I beat the crap out of it and finally got it loose. And one thing I did is sprayed some of this penetrating oil in here. This is kind of like a PV blaster. I just kind of sprayed it anywhere I could, like in these vents and stuff. Just anywhere I could to try to help. I don't know if it helped or not, but once it decided it was going to come free, it finally came free. So I'm going to pull it off here. So that's that. And it's a good thing we're not reusing this. So that's the old one. And now I think what I'm going to do is get some brake parts cleaner and spray out here and get everything clean. Here's the brake parts cleaner. And just gonna smell this on there. It's gonna make a nasty mess. We already have a nasty mess down here. I'm gonna have to clean up here in a second. But we really don't have a chance to get these clean because they're always enclosed in the rotor. And this shit stinks really bad. So it's probably good to be in a ventilated area, which I'm kind of not. Okay, so we'll do the other side. I think I've used up all my rest of my stuff. So that should be good enough, and then that stuff kind of dries on its own. It evaporates on its own. So now, let's see. We will probably go ahead and put on the rotors now. And let me get my gloves. You don't really want to get your fingers on the new rotors. I mean, it's not the end of the world, I guess, but it's not good to have the oil from your hands and stuff all over them. Okay, so here's some new shiny rotors. No rust or nothing, obviously. Go ahead and put these on. I'm looking at these pads again on this side. They seem to look pretty good. Okay. So this you could, as long as we get the holes lined up, should go in okay. So there we go. Just push it on there. Alright, and now we'll get the other one. Okay, so now I've got the other rotor. Put this guy in there. Kind of make sure everything's somewhat dry in there, which it pretty much is. That's okay. So now that's on, and then I've got this little rubber grommet. I'll push in there if I can. Okay, so that's that rubber piece. Just gonna kind of keep moisture out of there. I need to put it in on the other side before I forget. Okay. I think it's on there good then. Okay. Now I think really what we definitely need to do is go ahead and compress the this cylinder back in there, because otherwise once we try to put the new pads on, it's not going to fit. So I'm going to get a C-clamp for that. I'm going to use a C-clamp and the old pads. I'm just going to put one end on this nut back here, and the part with the threads on it on the pad. Okay, so go ahead. Again, this is the old pad. Don't do this with your new ones. Now we're just screwing it back in to compress the cylinder back in there. We'll go as far as we can. I think that's it. So now we'll do it on this side. Keep it light. Why don't you come over here? So again, I've got the old pad in there. Okay, so here's how it looks. And now I'm just going to turn it in there. One thing I probably should have done is you can take the cap off of the where the brake fluid reservoir is up there, just to kind of, because the brake fluid's gonna level is gonna go up higher as I do this a little bit, but it may not as much for rear brakes. I don't know. Okay, so these are all compressed in now, so that's good. And now what I would say we need to do is we need to put these back on, but we also need to put this new hardware on. So I'm going to leave this over here because on this side, because I don't want to get confused on which goes to what. But so let's come over here and we'll do this one. So the pads come with this new hardware, and so there's one. We have 8 pieces, which I would think I would only need 4. So I'm not really sure if I got extra or why I have all those. Let me see something. I guess these are all exactly the... Oh, wait a minute. We got some that have a wider opening and some that have a smaller opening. So maybe that's why they sent me these, because there could have been 2 different sizes on these Muranos. So it looks like we need to just use the ones with the wider opening on them. Okay. Alright, so those seem to be good in there now. And so this is where the brake pads slide. They have these little ears on them. And they go in there and they slide inside of those channels. So we're going to put some lubricant in there to make sure they can function like they're supposed to. I think what I'm going to do is go ahead and snap the hardware and stuff in on the other side, and then we'll come back. Okay, so it occurred to me that I should kind of clean this up, which I've already done. So I had taken the rotor back off, and you can use a wire brush. This is a barbecue brush, but it's got this end on it that works pretty good. So I just went in here like this, and it works getting in the tight spaces and stuff. Just to kind of scrub it clean. And then it was very hard to get the rotors off, so because the metal was kind of sticking together. And that's what happens like when you have, I guess, different kinds of metals. Over time they kind of start rusting together. So okay, I've got this grease. It's a dielectric compound, and it's like a caliper grease that I'm going to use. And I'm just going to put some. I think it'd be easier to just apply it to the inside of the rotor. So I'm going to do that. That way that in the future, I shouldn't have that issue of trying to get the rotors off, which honestly, the next time I do this is probably going to be a couple of years from now. So I'm just taking, I got a little on my finger, and I'm just rubbing it in here and getting it in there. And I'm trying to record this myself right now, which is kind of hard. I'm just going to use my finger and swirl it around in there. Okay. So, now we've got that. I'm going to put the rotor back on. Try not to get my fingers all over it. So the next thing, I'll go ahead and do that on the other side, and then we'll start putting the calipers and pads and stuff on. Okay, so I wanted to talk to you a little bit about these slide pins in here, because I had to do a little research and learn a little bit about them, because one of them, this top one, did not have any rubber on it, and then this bottom one has a rubber tip on it. And so they both fit in either way, but there's a certain way they're supposed to go in a certain spot, and that confused me because I was like, I'd never really seen that, because the front ones I believe had rubber on both of them, like kind of in the mid part of the shaft. But so I did some research online, and what they are. So the one with the rubber bushing is called a trailing pin, and without the bushing would be a leading pin. Okay, and so I found this neat little picture that kind of shows where the heck they're supposed to go. So if you think about the rotor spinning as the vehicle's moving forward, so if you had like a dot or something on here, the first spot that the rotor would contact would be the leading position, and then the last spot it would contact is the trailing position. So the leading one does not have the rubber on it. Here again, the leading pin does not have rubber on it. Okay, so here's this bracket and the rotor. So this goes on there like this. Okay, so the rotor is going to touch this top part first when the vehicle moves forward. So we don't want rubber on this pin, which is what we did. And so I looked at this on the other side and got that set up right too. So I've done rear pads on this before, and I didn't even realize that, and I think I put one of them back the wrong way or something. But I don't think it's like a life or death thing, but it's to avoid a clicking noise, I guess you can get. So now you know about that, which this is the first I've heard of it, and maybe for you too. Okay, so now what we're going to do is go ahead and clean these pins off, and we're going to put new grease on them, or lubricant, I guess you could call it. You should call it. There'll probably already be a little grease on there. You can get off and just wipe it clean. And then this is some grease I had left over from another job. So, and truthfully, there doesn't seem to be much in there. So I'm going to use this instead. This is a silicone brake, caliper grease, and dielectric compound. So we'll use this instead. And put some all down there, and then spin it around and get it all over it. So it's completely covered, and I'll put that in there, pull this one out, clean it up real good. Okay, like this. And we'll put some more on there, on this one. And then spin it around, get some grease all over it. Because these need to have grease on them so that the pads can slide back and forth. And then this will go back in there. And the boots on here look good. If they have any tears or rips in them, you need to replace those, because you'll get dirt and stuff in there, and then the grease and stuff might dry out and whatever. So, alright, so I'm going to do this on the other side and we'll be back. Okay, so I got this bracket on here, and we're just putting the screws in now. Yep, I'm gonna have that problem again with this because of that bar being in the way. So, you know, because I can't get the ratchet on there. So I gotta use this box end wrench again. So we'll just come back after we get all these screws in, okay? Okay, so we're gonna try and get this wrapped up. So we've got those brackets on there. I haven't torqued the bolts down yet. I guess we could do them now. So this is my repair manual showing torque specs. So I'm talking about the caliper mounting bracket bolts, and we're talking about the rear. So you can see it says 62. So I have my torque wrench here, and we're going to set it 62, and go ahead and tighten the top one down. Give me a second. Okay, so we've got this set at 62 now. I'm not going to be able to do this exactly on the bottom because I'm not going to be able to fit that wrench on the bottom one, but we can at least torque this one right. So okay, so you hear that click and that means you're done. Unfortunately, this is not going to fit this bottom bolt. So wherever the heck my wrench is, I'll just tighten that as tight as well, not as tight as I can, but I'll get that pretty snug. So here we are on this side, trying to prop this camera up. Okay, so tighten this one again. Okay, so that's good. And here's my wrench over here I was looking for. I'm just gonna push down on it pretty good, and honestly, that's probably good right there. Because 62 foot-pounds isn't a terrible amount of torque. It's you know, just get it good and tight. Okay, so that's probably good. All right, those aren't going nowhere. Okay. So now, as soon as I find my grease, here's my grease, and we're going to put that on in these channels. Okay. So those, got some in there. On the there's a front and back. So we've got some there, some on that one. It's getting dark back here. Let's see. Okay, go over here. Maybe I can show you a little better. Okay. So we're putting some in this channel. This is where the brake pads are going to go. So we've got it in there, and then I'll kind of rub it around in there. And then I've got some up in that channel, and then I got to do it on the back. It's hard to see. I'm trying to film this myself. Anyway, so I'm gonna get that grease in there and come back. Okay, so we put the lubricant in here in these channels, 2 on both sides, and so now we need to put some lubricant on the back of the pads, and I'm probably just gonna have a dog in my way the whole time. So we don't have to do a lot, but I'm gonna just swirl it around there, and that should be good. And I'm gonna go ahead and put this in there. Okay, so he's on there, and then these pads have this metal thing on here. This is like a sensor. Basically, when the pads start wearing down like really low, you'll start hearing a squeaking noise because it's going to start hitting that metal sensor. So this one goes on the back, and then this is supposed to go on the top. So I'm going to put some grease on this too now. Okay, so I'm going to put some on the back of that pad. Put this one in place. Okay, so now the pads are both in place on there. So I'll do the other side and we'll come back. Okay, so we got the caliper on this side, and we were able to go ahead and get the slide pins in there. I didn't screw them on yet. Okay, then I'm gonna come over here. And now I still need to put the caliper on this side. I got a little worried because I was afraid this bar was going to be in the way on the other side, but I was able to get this in there, so we need to pull these back out now. Okay, and then the caliper is going to go on. And then put this in there. Let's see. This one you have to kind of wiggle to get in there now because that bar was in the way. But we got that. So I'm going to kind of just screw them in with my finger. For now. Okay. Right. Okay, so again, I can't fit the ratchet on this one, so I'm gonna looks like I need to get this boot pulled out a little bit. There we go. And yeah, okay. Okay. So this is a 14 millimeter. So we gotta finish tightening this one up. Okay. So that's already pretty tight. And what I want to look at is the torque specs on this one now. So we're looking at the caliper mounting bolts for the rear, which is 32 foot-pounds. So let's see. I gotta get my torque around. I gotta set it to 32. Right there. All right. So here we go. this isn't going to be too tight. Okay, so that was it. And then again, I'm not going to be able to fit it on the bottom. So, let's see here. We're just going to get her good and snug. That should be good. And then we're going to come over to the other side and torque this one down. Okay, so we pretty much got those in as far as we can, and then put the torque wrench back on it. Okay, and there's not going to be a loud click when you're on like a low torque setting like that. And then I'm going to get my other wrench. Let's see here. It's right here. So that's good and snug now. So get this boot. See this? It wants to push this boot down, but I need to get it to pull back up. Like it should be. Okay. So that looks good. Okay, so I think we're basically totally done now with the brakes. One thing to think about before you even put the caliper on is if you notice like these brake lines have little lines in them, those need to be completely straight. If they're twisted, then you need to reposition the caliper so it's not twisted. And so this side looks good and the line's not twisted, and so we will just start putting the wheels on now. And I screwed on these lug nuts, and now this one is not a scissor jack, obviously it's a hydraulic jack, and we can just you just undo this screw here to let the let it out. So another thing is, see, this doesn't fit on the pinch weld, so I just use a block of wood and that usually works fine. Also, there's a safety pin that you can put there, but you got to pull that out to lower it down. So we're going to lower it down, and this is going to drop down. Apparently I need two hands. Okay, so she dropped down. Alright, and then we'll torque these lug nuts up, and I won't spend time making you watch me do that, but I did want to point out, I mentioned earlier that I figured that this might overflow. This is where the brake fluid goes, so, and it did. So it's I think what I might do is we do need to go ahead and press on the brakes to get the brake pressure built back up and to get the pads compressed. So I think I'm going to go ahead and do that and see if the level comes down. So you pretty much probably can't see nothing. But I'm pushing on the brake, it's going really far down. And we actually already have pretty good pressure now. We got good brake pedal feel now. So this is still not, the fluid did come down a little bit. So that should be fine. You can squeegee some of it out, or suction out of it. Suction some out of it, I guess I should say. This is a antifreeze tester, but it does have this thing on there to kind of let you section some stuff out. So go ahead and squeeze it, and then put the tube in there, and we can suction some out. There you go. Now I'm just going to squirt this in the trash can. So now we're getting back to where we need to be on the max line. So that's good. And then I'm going to come through and kind of clean this mess up. Next thing to do is we'll torque this down, and then I'm going to do a road test just to make sure everything seems to be working good. If it doesn't, I'll come back and let you know why. So hopefully you don't see me again. All right, thanks. Thanks for watching.